Hello weebs, buckle in for another anime recap. Let me tell you about the time when humanity was crushed by mysterious enemies, then 5 legendary mages, known as the Heavenly Invaders, defeated them. To keep the threat contained, the strongest mages, the Magi Evander, built a magical dome and tower. Since then, every generation's 5 strongest mages have been tasked with guarding the dome from the top of the wizard's tower. Will Serfort and Elfaria, albeit Serfort, childhood friends, promise to climb the wizard's tower together. Now, a 6th-year student at Regarden Magic Academy, Will's future looks grim. Elfaria joined the Magi Evander 5 years ago due to her unmatched magical power, while Will has no magic and faces constant ridicule from teachers and students. Despite lacking magic, Will's incredible strength allows him to defeat monsters in the labyrinth and even outfight skilled mages with only his sword and a few magical items. Driven to keep his promise to Elfaria, Will is determined to reach the top of the wizard's tower, no matter what it takes. The story kicks off with a guy named Will, living in a world where magic is everything, like, if you didn't have it, you might as well be invisible. Sadly for Will, he got the short end of the stick because he's totally magicless.
Magic.
But hey, that didn't stop them from tossing him into one of those high-end magical schools. The big question though, how's he gonna survive in a place where everyone's shooting spells like it's a hobby? Will's solution? He focuses on sword skills instead. Every day he goes into these crazy high-level dungeons, battling massive monsters that spit magic at him. But Will's quick on his feet, dodging fireballs and slicing through beasts like they're nothing. Easy peasy. But deep down he knows this is just a warm-up. If he wants to get out alive, there's way worse stuff ahead, but he's been through it before. Next day, after a brutal dungeon run, Will drags his tired body into class. Professor Edward is blabbering on about alchemy, trying to teach the class how to make sulfur for explosives. Will's barely keeping his eyes open when Edward calls on him. Of course, Will's out cold, so when Edward yells his name, he jumps up like he's been zapped. Edward orders him to the front to show what they just learned, but Will's hands are shaking as he tries to make flames with his wand. Nothing happens. The whole class bursts out laughing and Will just wants to crawl under the desk. But Edward's quick to shut them up, clearly frustrated. He can't believe someone so good with theory can mess up so badly in practice. He's honestly wondering how Will even got into this school. Then Chin steps up looking like he owns the place. With a snap of his fingers, he lights the whole room on fire, creating sulfur like it's a casual Tuesday. Will hides behind the flames, totally embarrassed. Edward gives Chin a stern look, but Chin's too busy showing off. He whips up a massive sulfur crystal and starts ranting about how magic is the real power in this world and how mages are the true heroes. He tells everyone that if you want to make it here, you better master magic, because if you can't, you might as well leave now. After class, Chin and his gang roll up to Will, looking like they're ready to roast him. They start mocking him, saying he can only handle the weakest monsters in the dungeon. Will's about to just keep his head down, but then Key, his childhood friend, steps in like a total badass. She straight up tells Chin to back off, throwing some serious shade, saying she's way cooler than him and his crew combined. Chin stumbles for a second but quickly tries to play it cool, saying that kindness and hard work are worthless if you don't have magic. Then, like the cocky jerk he is, he and his crew bounce. Will and Key walk off together and she tells him not to stress, but Will's used to being the punching bag. As he looks up at the sky, he mutters, "It's a damn beautiful day though." A few years ago, humans were stuck in the dark, running scared from evil spirits that threw shadows over everything. Then 5 legendary mages, the Magi Evander, stepped in, kicked ass, and showed humanity the real sky. These mages weren't just strong, they were the strongest, and the title of Magi Evander went to the top dog. Will remembers the promise he made with his childhood friend, Illyria. She used to read him stories about the Magi Evander, and they both swore they'd be one someday. Illyria kept her end of the deal, becoming the youngest Magi Evander ever and living it up in the Divine Tower. Will, on the other hand, is still grinding away, barely scraping by, trying to hold on to that dream. Later that day, Will runs into Professor Wagner, who flips the hell out when he finds out Will went solo into the level 7 dungeon. Wagner warns him he's gonna end up dead at this rate, but Will just casually asks if he'll get any credits for it. Wagner sighs and hands him 2 credits. Will starts celebrating, but then Wagner hits him with the truth. If Will wants a shot at being a Magi Evander, he's gotta get into the Upper Institute, which means racking up a ton of credits in spell work and combat. The kicker? Will can't use magic, so no matter how much he kicks ass in the dungeon, he won't get credits for spell work. He's stuck, but Will's not about to back down. He decides he's gonna make it work no matter what. Wagner tells him he needs 4 more credits by the end of the week if he wants to graduate. Will's mind is blown, but he's ready to dive in head first. Wagner mentions a monster called Baskerville on the 6th floor, a beast that no one's ever ever managed to kill. Will gets all hype, even giving his teacher a quick hug in excitement. But what he doesn't know is that Chen overheard everything. And now, Chen's got a plan. He's gonna kill Baskerville before Will can, hoping to get him kicked out of the academy for not having enough credits. That evening, Chen entered the cave with his sidekick Kiki, and told her to sniff out the monster. Kiki wasn't feeling it. She remembered the last time Will fought Baskerville and how its breath roasted her. But Chen was determined to find the monster before Will. He and his crew made their way to the 6th floor. One of his lackeys, a guy with bright pink hair, questioned if it was smart for just 3 mages to go in, but Chen brushed him off, confident he was one of the best mages in class and could handle it. He ordered his crew to use their scam magic to track the monster. Out of nowhere, a huge beast appeared and slammed one of Chen's lackeys into the wall, flattening him instantly. Chen froze in shock while the pink-haired guy screamed in fear. Will heard the screams and ran toward the noise, worried someone was in trouble. When he rounded the corner, he saw Chen blasting fire at a massive creature. Will immediately recognized it as an evil sentinel, a tough monster worth 10 credit scores. He wondered what it was doing in this dungeon, and then he realized Chen's magic wasn't doing anything. The monster shrugged off the flames and kept charging at Chen. Will thought about walking away, remembering all the times Chen mocked him, but then he thought of Illyria. She always said he was the kindest person she knew. She had once given him a pair of glasses as a gift, and that memory pulled him back to his true self. Will put on the glasses just as the monster raised its weapon to finish off Chen. With no time to think, he rushed in and blocked the attack just in time, saving Chen's sorry ass. Back at the academy, Edward stormed into Wagner's room, demanding that he send his familiar into the dungeons. Apparently, Chen and his lackey had snuck onto the 6th floor without permission. Wagner knew exactly what was going on but told Edward not to worry. Will was also on that floor, and Wagner was pretty sure he had things under control. In the dungeon, Will was going full beast mode, dodging the monster's attacks like a damn pro. He blocked hits, weaved around like it was nothing, and even sliced off one of the monster's fingers with a clean slash. The monster got furious, throwing a tantrum and swinging back, but Will was way too quick. Finally, the monster landed a hit, but Will blocked it with his sword, barely flinching. The beast started chucking rocks, thinking it could crush him, but Will sliced through them like they were made of paper. Then he jumped up, landed on its back, and stabbed the sucker right through the neck. The monster thrashed around, while Chen just stood there, jaw dropped, totally stunned. Back at the academy, Edward was losing his mind watching this. Wagner calmly explained that Will was an outcast since he had no magic, but his strength was insane, like a dwarf on steroids. The dude was tough as nails, and his brain was sharp enough to pick up on attack patterns in a split second. They watched as Will chopped off the monster's arm like it was a twig, then casually walked over to a massive sword lying on the ground. Without breaking a sweat, he picked it up like it was a toy. Wagner looked at Edward and said Will was the only real warrior in a world full of magic. The monster fired a beam of energy from its mouth, but Will just blocked it with the giant sword and then sliced the beast into pieces like it was nothing. After that, he helped Chen up, who was still in shock, not even able to process what just happened. Edward, absolutely pissed, yelled at Wagner, saying that a guy with no magic could never beat a mage. He stormed out, all kinds of angry. Wagner just smirked, knowing Edward was about to lose his mind even more. But he also knew Will's story was about to be legendary. 5 years ago, Willie was the ultimate joke at school. No magic, no talent, just a walking disappointment. The only reason they even let him in was because he was Illyria's relative. But once she became the mage Vander, the school stopped pretending to care about him. The respect gone. Willie got a ton of disrespect, but he kept grinding, determined to get through and graduate. One day, Wagner dragged Willie to meet the headmistress. She wasn't sure if he was even worth keeping around. But when she handed him a sword and tested him, Willie totally shut her down, blocking all her fire spells like it was no big deal. The headmistress was impressed and gave him the green light to stay. Wagner was shocked, thinking it would be way harder than that. Even though Willie had no magic, she was curious to see what he could do. Willie asked if he'd ever be strong enough to hang with Illyria again, and she told him he'd have to be nuts to let anything hold him back, but there were no guarantees. Still, she was hyped to see what he'd achieve. Now, Willie's stuck in Wagner's class, learning about the Tower of Magic. To make it to the top, you either have to create new magic, which is super rare, or rack up 7,000 credits. Most people go for the credits, but since Willie's in the remedial class, he's struggling just like everyone else. After class, Kali checks in on Willie and asks how he's handling Wagner's tough class. Willie admits Wagner's a hard ass, but he appreciates it. Most teachers wouldn't give a damn about a class like this. As they stroll down the hall, they overhear Chen's crew bragging about how he supposedly took down the evil sentinel. They don't question how he survived, just assume Chen did it. But deep down, Chen knows he's lying. Willie's the one who actually killed that beast. Just as Shin spots Willie strolling by, he sees it as his chance to throw down and marches over, ready to start some shit. But as soon as he gets close, it hits him. Willie's not some weakling. In fact, if Willie wanted to, he could probably knock him the hell out with one punch, but he's holding back. Shin's brain scrambles for a moment, realizing he's way out of his league. With his tail between his legs, he lets go of Willie's jacket and walks off without a word, his ego taking a massive hit. After Chin leaves, Ki gives Willie a look, clearly sensing something went down. She asks him what the hell happened, but before Willie can answer, Edward storms into Headmistress Cauldron's office, acting like he's running the joint. He demands Willie get expelled. Cauldron raises an eyebrow, asking why the sudden beef with Willie, especially since the guy's already in his final year. Edward, still pissed, spits that Willie's not a real mage, he's a damn warrior, and he doesn't want some magic-less idiot stealing the spotlight from actual mages. Cauldron pulls up Willie's records, pointing out that the guy's grades are top tier, his writing's on point, and his magic reports are solid. Even without magic, Willie's a damn near perfect student. She tells Edward that if Willie wants to be a mage vander, he's got the potential to crush it in whatever field he picks. It's the Academy's job to make sure they churn out capable people, not just magic freaks. Edward, still fuming like a kettle about to boil over, insists that Willie's dream of being a mage vander is the real problem. Cauldron agrees but comes up with a plan. Edward's going to test Willie himself. If Willie fails, Edward gets to toss him out. Edward asks if Cauldron's seriously cool with putting Willie's future in his hands, and she just shrugs, saying she's fine with it. In fact, she thinks it'll be damn entertaining to watch the Dark Viper mage try to take down Willie. Back in the locker room, Willie's getting ready for his next class and asks Kali to help him open his locker. She does, and he apologizes for always needing her help because of his lack of magic. Kali's chill with it, but then she notices the sword in his locker and asks if he's still training with it. Willie says he is, but he can't exactly practice it at school, and his damn roommate won't let him do anything risky in the dorm. Later, Willie and Kali hit the library to study together. Even though Willie already had the material in the bag, he was going all in. Kali told him to chill the hell out, but Willie wasn't having any of it. He couldn't afford to slack off, not a single credit could slip through his fingers. Plus, he actually liked diving into history from different races' perspectives, especially the dwarves. Those little bastards had gone toe-to-toe with powerful mages and still didn't back down, even when everything was going to hell. Just as they were getting into it, Kali spotted a white strand of hair on Willie's head and joked that it was from overworking himself. She offered to yank it out, but Willie said it wasn't necessary. Of course, she didn't give a damn about his protests. She was determined to do it anyway. Right when things were getting a little flirty, Edward snuck up behind Willie, ruining the vibe with his usual cocky self, telling him to meet him in the spell hall. He had some business to handle. Later, Willie showed up at the spell hall, expecting some normal lesson. Instead, Edward dropped the bomb that he had a special remedial class for him. Willie's gut told him something was off. Edward was looking to see what Willie could really do, so he warned him that this wasn't going to be some easy bullshit. He said if Willie could land a single hit on him, he'd get 5 credits. But if he failed, he was out of the damn school. No backing out. Edward was ready to f*** him up, casting a spell right off the bat. Meanwhile, Cauldron called Wagner to her office and briefed him on the situation. She showed him what Edward was putting Willie through and told Wagner to stay the hell out of it. She thought it was fair since Wagner had his own chance to watch over Willie, but Wagner wasn't having it. He knew this was way too harsh. Edward, who almost became a Mander, was way too powerful for Willie, and the kid was in real danger. Willie had been dodging Edward's spells for a while, but he knew Edward was holding back, just weak black magic. That wasn't going to be enough. Willie tried to get the jump on him with a sneak attack, kicking Edward, but Edward blocked it easily with a shield. The shield was like a goddamn brick wall. Edward laughed his ass off, calling him hopeless for thinking a simple kick would do anything. Then, with a snap of his fingers, Edward blasted Willie across the room. Willie hit the floor hard, starting to panic. He didn't think he could win this. Edward taunted him, saying he was only going to use 2 spells, one for fire and one for defense. He said the guy who masters one spell could easily beat someone who knew 1,000. Edward let loose with the fire spell, and Willie knew he was He tried to run, but it didn't matter. Edward hit him with another blast. Willie fell to the ground, realizing he couldn't take Edward down like this. But if he had his goddamn sword, things would have been different. Outside, Kali had been putting stuff away in her locker, worrying her ass off about Willie. Edward had told him to come alone, and that couldn't mean anything good. Suddenly, T came running in, covered in blood, Willie's blood. She was rushing to grab his sword from his locker. Kali's stomach dropped as she realized something had gone horribly wrong. Without a second thought, she yanked Willie's sword from the locker and bolted the hell out of there to help. Willie lies on the ground as Edward tells him he'll never be a magi vander if he can't beat him. Edward insists magic will always be stronger than the sword. Willie, however, still wants to become a magi vander, driven by a promise to the girl he loves. Kali suddenly appears and throws Willie his sword. Now armed, Willie manages to block Edward's fire spell, shocking Edward. Despite the odds, Willie charges, dodging attacks, and scratches Edward's cheek. Edward, impressed, admits Willie passed the test, gives him 5 credits and walks off. Willie collapses from exhaustion, but Kali congratulates him as he passes out. Cauldron and Wagner praise Willie's strategy and strength, realizing he might have what it takes to be a magi vander. The scene kicks off with a flashback. Elfaria, with her usual soft smile, tells Will he's a brave and kind person. Then she hands him the goggles we see him wear now. Will, clearly moved, promises Elfaria that they'll watch the sunset together one day. Elfaria's eyes light up with hope as she looks forward to that future. With a soft goodbye, she heads toward the tower. Will stands frozen for a moment, his heart heavy, before tears spill down his face. Wagner shows up and Will, still holding back his sobs, tells him this will be the last time he cries. Fast forward to the present, where Will is delivering newspapers to homes around the town. While on his route, he trips, sending the stack of newspapers tumbling to the ground. He picks them up one by one and comes across a story about Elfaria's magic creation activities. His heart skips a beat as he reads about her new advancements. His eyes then catch a new decree from the Upper Institute, and to his surprise, Elfaria is behind this order. A mix of excitement and confusion fills him, and he decides to head back to his dorm. Once inside, Will approaches Rosti and asks if he can make him a magic item. Rosti raises an eyebrow but agrees, especially after Will explains that Elfaria sent out an order to collect Frostwalker ice cores. Rosti hands over the magic items, wishing Will the best of luck. Will heads to the 4th floor, where he spots several students, including Shaun, defeating Frostwalkers with ease. His eyes then widen as he sees large penguin-like monsters intimidating a girl. Without hesitation, Will rushes over and saves her. The girl, Iris, thanks him warmly, her eyes sparkling with gratitude. Meanwhile, Wagner is lecturing his students about magic. One student, Rose, asks him if he thinks Elfaria is an extraordinary mage, considering she created her own magic. Wagner nods thoughtfully and says that Elfaria is remarkable, possibly even the best mage there is. Back on the 4th floor, Will and Iris continue their exploration. Iris reveals her dreams. She wants to be useful to the Magia Vander. She also confides in Will her wish to one day hold up the real sky, a reference to the Great Barrier. Will's expression grows serious as he recalls the history of the Great Barrier, created by Magia Vander's immense magic. He warns Iris that when the barrier falls, the world will plunge into darkness and the calamity will come. Iris, looking down for a moment, then opens up about her past. She tells Will that she met Elfaria once, and that Elfaria saved her from monsters, an event that fueled her desire to pursue her dreams of helping the Magia Vander. Will listens intently, the weight of her words sinking in. Will had surveyed the area, his senses sharp as he detected a strong Frostwalker nearby. Turning to Iris, he had reminded her that even though he didn't have the magical talent she and the others possessed, his experience and research skills made him more than capable. They had entered the domain of the Frostwalker, but to their surprise, they had faced a damn Frost Rex instead. Iris, with a gleam in her eyes, had stated that the beast was worth 6 credits. Will had pulled out Rosti's magic items, cool as ever, and had told Iris that he could handle it. With his raw athleticism, Rosti's enchanted gear, and a well-timed spell, he had taken the damn beast down. Iris had watched in awe, clearly shocked by Will's strength and skill, but her reaction had been off, like she was hiding something. She had wondered if she should report his success to some shady, undisclosed party. Meanwhile, Will had shown Iris the Hall ice cores from the Frost Rex. He had suggested they head back and regroup with the others so they could deliver the cores to the people who'd requested them. Iris had agreed, though her mind seemed to be off in another world. Later, Iris had taken a leisurely stroll through Mercedes Colossus Wizard Tower, running into a few Magia Vander, Cariot, Zio, and Eleanor. Elfaria had been there too. Cariot had whined about how boring the meeting had been. Eleanor, worried about not having enough warriors for the Fated Day event, had been convinced history was going to repeat itself. Zio, as blunt as always, had asked Iris if she had found someone to help prevent the disaster. Iris, with no hesitation, had recommended Will. While some had debated Will's worth, others had flat out disagreed. Just as Eleanor and Zio had been about to argue, Cariot had stepped in, suggesting they wait for the Grand Magic Festival to make a final decision. The group had broken up, leaving Iris alone with Elfaria. Iris, still thinking about it all, had called Will an exceptional warrior. Elfaria, without a word, had summoned a glowing crystal before her and had whispered Will's name with a devilish smile on her face. It was revealed that 12,000 credits were required for a student to advance to the Upper Institute, an absolute condition for becoming a magic vander. The scene shifted to Shaun, Colette, and others, all participating in a magic exam to earn credits. Will was also part of this event. During the fight, the other students found it downright hysterical to watch someone training to learn magic rely on fists rather than spells. To make matters worse, Will was struggling to even keep up with the golem, barely landing a punch. As Will was knocked down, the disappointed students bolted, muttering under their breath about his pathetic display of magic. They expected nothing less from some book learner who couldn't even get spell work right. Meanwhile, 3 prolific students, Lehana, Wignall, and Julius, earned credits effortlessly during the exam. Julius, eager and full of confidence, confronted Wignall and Lehana, hoping to challenge them one day. Wignall and Lehana, clearly amused, accepted his challenge with a grin before f***ing off. Julius and his buddies then stumbled upon Will, who was still picking himself up from the fight. They couldn't resist ripping into him, one of them even throwing in a mention of the Grand Magic Festival. Will's eyes flickered with recognition as he remembered the event. Later, Colette joined Will at the cafeteria. She told him he needed someone to scout him for the Grand Magic Festival. Will nodded, understanding, and explained the Grand Magic Festival to the others around him. Colette then shared more vital information, the 4 Tower factions and their connections to the Magia Vander. She told Will that if one of these factions chose him, he'd be one step closer to achieving his goals. Colette also mentioned the Watchers, mysterious figures who occasionally offered students a second chance to reach the tower. Will understood Colette's suggestion, but he had a damn good list of reasons why he wasn't going to follow through. Colette and Will made their way to their lockers, and Colette quickly picked up on something being off. She dug around and found an inhibitor and a sound-dampening barrier nearby. Without hesitation, she used Kiki's magic to break through it. They found a hidden stairway leading underground. Heading down, they stumbled upon a shady group of students gambling on who'd win the Grand Magic Festival. Will and Colette spotted Shaun, and they talked about people like Lehana, Wignall, and others hanging around him. Some time passed, and just as Will was about to leave class, Colette stopped him. She wanted to hit the dungeon with him, but Will told her he was working at Gina's Tavern tonight. Later, at Gina's Tavern, Will was serving drinks to some dwarven customers when one of them brought up the Grand Magic Festival. Will casually mentioned that he might not even bother with it. Gina, who was also working, reminded Will to stay focused like Rosti. Rosti was grinding away at Gina's place too. Afterward, Will and Rosti talked about his wages and how it might be smarter to find another job, but Will wasn't about to leave the dwarves. He liked chatting with them. Then Julius and his crew strolled in, talking trash about the tavern and its customers. Julius snapped his fingers, demanding food and drinks. Will, getting pissed off, informed them that dwarves were way more important than they thought, and messing with them would only bring trouble. Will stepped up and told Julius and his friends to apologize. Of course they refused, so Will knocked out Julius's goons. Julius, thinking his ice magic would intimidate Will, tried to flex his power, but when he saw Will's unshakable resolve, he hesitated. Julius finally backed off, telling Will to enter the Grand Magic Festival so he could humiliate him there. Will agreed but said if he won, Julius better apologize to the dwarves for acting like a jackass. The scene kicks off with Colette and Will lounging in the capital of Magic Stadium's athlete waiting room. Mercedes steps up to give a speech, and the Grand Magic Festival finally gets underway. Raj Holland, a scout from the Fire faction, tells his underling to keep a sharp eye out and analyze everything closely, knowing the location of the next golden egg is still up in the air. Meanwhile, some students chat about the upcoming sky race, and many are betting on Lehana's victory, since she's practically the Academy's star. Mercedes and Iris, off to the side, discuss the scouts scattered among the audience. Mercedes also notes that their Earth princess isn't competing in Magecraft this year. Iris, with a sly grin, drops a bombshell. The competition for the Academy's top students has already started. She then tells Mercedes that she's got her sights set on a particular participant. Iris leaves, dropping the hint that she's got a plan in mind. Shaun, meanwhile, heads over to the waiting room, greeted by cheers from his friends, hyped for his upcoming crown attack. Colette had asked Shaun to meet her there, as she wanted him on her team. Shaun, all confident, thought he was the obvious choice for Colette instead of Will. But when he walks in and sees Will sitting next to Colette, his mood sours immediately. He's not thrilled about the situation. Colette reminds Shaun that for the crown attack, they need a team with at least 21,000 combined credits, which is a pretty big deal. Julius and his crew walk past, throwing some side-eye at Will, and Colette fills Shaun in. Julius and Will are apparently not on the best terms. After a few words from Maes and Edward, a group of elves steps up, ready to kick off the crown attack competition. The elves perform a spell that creates multiple zones for the participants to navigate. Maes starts explaining the differences between each domain, mentioning the critical item they must claim to win. He warns that participants will face a ton of obstacles along the way, and of course, there are plenty of dirty tricks they can pull to mess with each other. Maes highlights some key players in the event, including Will. The students around them laugh and talk smack about Will entering the competition, clearly thinking thinking he's out of his league. Then, Maes gives the signal and the event begins. Julius and his team rush toward the block obstacles, only for the blocks to turn into golems. Will, Colette, and Shaun waste no time and charge right toward them. The battle's on. Colette channels her magic and gives Will a gauntlet, basically a badass fist device. Will straight up crushes the golems in his way with it, leaving the crowd dumbfounded. Some are hyped, but others are quick to gossip that Colette's magic is the real reason he's holding his ground. Meanwhile, a quick flashback shows Shaun thinking back to his Frostwalker run with Will, low-key respecting the guy, but he's still not about to admit it. Cut back to the Crown Attack event, where Will and his crew are bulldozing through the Badlands zone, plowing through every obstacle like it's nothing. Some are cheering Will on, while others are throwing shade, saying Colette's magic is doing all the heavy lifting. Doesn't matter though, because Maes is like, everyone else is getting wrecked, while Will and his team just keep pushing forward. They finally hit the last zone, only to find it rigged with traps set up by Edward. Will's thinking time to set up the perfect ambush for Julius. He knows things are about to go sideways when they near the crown, but of course, Julius isn't about to let anyone just waltz in. He throws the first punch and Will barely dodges it, sparking a full-on fight between the two. They're going at it like beasts when Shaun comes in, blasting his fire spell to break it up. He tells Julius to bounce, but the tension's still thick in the air. Colette figures out that Shaun was aiming for both Will and Julius from the start. Then, out of nowhere, Julius hits back with some ice magic, throwing Colette off guard. Shaun, being a rat, takes the chance to go after Will. Will loses the gauntlet and his sword in the chaos. Shaun tells him to pick it up and fight back if he's got the guts. The two stare each other down, the heat between them crackling like a damn fuse ready to blow. Years ago, when Will and Shaun first stepped into the academy, Will was straight up the loser of the year. The dude was like a magnet for bullies, getting notes stuck to his back that said worthless in big bold letters. It was pathetic to watch. But Shaun? He wasn't about to let that shit slide. He saw Will getting trashed, so he decided to do something, well, in his own messed up way. He straight up burned the note and told Will, with all the arrogance in the world, that he'd graciously let him be his underling so he wouldn't feel like a total waste of space anymore. But Will? He just gave Shaun this cold, dead stare like he was looking at a wall and then walked off. No response. And that pissed Shaun off to the fucking moon. Shaun wasn't having it, so he chased Will down, shook him like a damn ragdoll, and demanded an answer. Well, he just told him to let go, like Shaun was a fly on his shoulder, and walked off, leaving Shaun's pride shattered. That was the moment Shaun's interest turned to pure, unfiltered hate. Fast forward to now, and these two are still at each other's throats, fighting like they've got something to prove. Back at the capital of Magic Stadium, the crowd's buzzing as Maes updates everyone on the weird going down with Will's team. Edward pipes up, talking about how the Grand Magic Festival's Tower Scouts won't approve of Will and his crew going at each other like this. Meanwhile, Rosti and Kiki are sweating bullets, worried sick about Will. Then Iris shows up and sits next to them like she owns the place. She casually drops that she's rooting for Will cause someone told her about him. Meanwhile, Colette's trying to make a run for Will, but Julius isn't having any of it. He blocks her path and they go at it. Then, it gets wild. We find out Julius has somehow managed to clone himself during the competition. His clones start popping up all over the Crown Attack competition's different zones. Wignall steps up to face one of Julius's clones, kicks its ass, and grabs an ice shard it left behind. The crowd's buzzing with comments about what just went down, and we cut back to Will and Shaun going head to head. Then we get a flashback montage of Will getting the shit kicked out of him by his classmates. Will's narrating through it, saying how much of a failure he is and how he doesn't want anyone's pity. All he wants is to be left the hell alone. The montage fades, and we're right back in the action with Will and Shaun. Shaun summons this huge fiery falcon and sends it straight at Will. Will's all like, I'm chopping that thing down so I can finally get to you. He pulls off a sick move defending himself, but the crowd's more interested in how strong Shaun's magic is. The two start trading insults. Will flat out tells Shaun he hates him but doesn't have time to deal with him. His sights are set on Julius. Shaun starts listing off everything he hates about Will, including how Will ignores him and focuses on everyone else. Will, not missing a beat, finally acknowledges Shaun and gives him the fight he's been wanting. Will takes down Shaun's falcon and gets ready to strike Shaun himself, but Colette jumps in, stopping the fight cold. She tells Will she already took care of Julius, but he vanished on her. Shaun, not missing a chance, starts calling out Colette for her ragged clothes, but she shuts him down fast. Don't you dare judge me for my clothes, you misogynistic pig, she snaps, reminding him it's all his fault anyway. She then tells Will to get his ass moving, he's got unfinished business with Julius. Will, being surprisingly sweet, drapes his robe over Colette's shoulders and thanks her with sincerity, making her blush hard. He picks up his sword, ready to go, and tells Shaun down, they'll settle their beef some other time. Meanwhile, Julius and his team are about to be crowned champions when, out of nowhere, Will comes flying into the stadium like a damn missile. He locks eyes with Julius and challenges him to a fight. Sarisa spots Elfaria snoozing and doesn't waste a second before smacking her upside the head. She gives Elfaria a look and calls her out for always either catching Z's or zoning out at the bottom of the tower. Elfaria, clearly pissed and still half asleep, asks what Sarisa wants. Sarisa slaps a fat stack of papers in front of her, telling her to check it out. These are the candidates the scouts picked, and Sarisa's grinning because they've got a solid crew this year. She points to Julius, saying he's a perfect fit for the Ice faction and is absolutely killing it in the games. Sarisa even drops the bomb that Julius might be good enough to take her spot as her successor. Elfaria doesn't even bother fighting her on it, just nods and keeps it moving. Back to Will and Julius, both of them are in it to win it. They're throwing down hard, neither one backing down. Will's getting his butt kicked trying to take on Julius and his squad. Julius starts throwing shade, and that's when Will figures out he's not just fighting Julius, but 4 of his damn ice clones. One of Julius's clones goes kaboom, trapping Will in an ice prison. Werkner, Edward, and the rest of the crew catch on fast. Julius has learned one of Elfaria's top-tier spells. Julius, all smug, tells them he picked it up on his own and plans to expose Elfaria's game to the world. Will's not about to stay frozen. He breaks out and tries to throw hands with Julius again, but Julius traps him in another ice prison. This time, Julius pulls out a massive ice shard and starts taking swings at Will. He's flexing hard for the crowd and they're eating it up, hyping Julius up like crazy. But Will's not about to roll over. He breaks free, knocks out Julius's squad like it's nothing, and exposes Julius's little secret. He's been keeping the clones going with his friend's help. Elfaria doesn't argue when Sarisa points out that Julius has some serious chops, but she's all about Will being the one by her side. Will's been wrecking Julius's pride all this time, and Julius is losing his damn mind. Furious, he cranks up the stakes, making more clones to swarm Will. Julius knows he can't keep more than 4 clones in check without his squad's backup, but he's still running his mouth, saying Will won't have a clue which clone is the real deal. Will doesn't give a damn. He charges straight for the real Julius and calls out exactly how he cracked the code. Will drops the bomb. He grew up with Elfaria, spent years learning her magic, and that's how he figured out which clone was real. Julius, pissed off, summons 8 clones, thinking this'll be enough to crush Will. But nah, Will mows them down like they're nothing, knocking Julius the hell out cold. Everyone's flipping out, and Mike announces Will's win, still in total disbelief that some so-called no-talent kid just beat a dude who had over 10,000 credits in his back pocket. Wignall, seeing an opportunity, swoops in and steals the spotlight, grabbing the win for himself. The crowd is stunned, and Mike, clearly confused, declares Wignall the winner. The Grand Magic Games are over, but the aftermath's only heating up. Sarisa drops the bombshell news on Elfaria, and Elfaria's so embarrassed she can't even look anyone in the eye. She's wishing for some magic to erase everyone's memories or rewind time. Sarisa, not having it, says there's no way she's letting Elfaria pull a stunt like that, even if such a spell exists. Elfaria, holding back tears, insists she wasn't trying to screw Will over. She just wanted to keep him close, to always have him around so they could play together. She's crushed that her messed up past's out in the open now. Meanwhile, in the arena, Shaun's watching from the sidelines, his jaw practically on the floor. He can't believe Will took down Julius. He walks off, muttering to himself that he'll beat Will one day. Colette checks in on Will, asking if he's alright. Will, looking beat but keeping his head high, apologizes for their loss but says at least he kept his damn promise. Donnan and his dwarf crew roll up, giving props to Will, Colette, and the rest of the crew for slaying the Grand Magic Festival competition. Colette drops the truth bomb on Donnan. Nobody won and no one got scouted. She's ready to pin the blame on Shaun for wrecking their shot. Donnan gets it but can't help but feel pumped that Will took down Julius, so he's not mad. Cut to Julius. Dude's stuck working for Gina now because the dwarves are making him do labor to earn back their respect. The dwarves want that apology in sweat, so Julius is hustling around, embarrassed as hell. Colette goes to confront Werkner about Will. She wonders if people will start treating Will like a superstar now that he's the hero of the Grand Magic Festival. Werkner straight up tells her, yeah, that's exactly what's gonna happen. Soon after, a bunch of students swarm Will, asking if he wants in on their crew for the upcoming Praxis event, a week-long dungeon crawl. Colette steps in, furious, saying Will shouldn't join anyone's party after all the crap they put him through before the festival. But Will's eating it all up. He's loving the attention and the love from everyone. Colette tries again, saying she and Will have plans tomorrow. Later, Colette and Rose chat about Colette's date with Will. Meanwhile, Rosti asks Will if he's planning on hitting the dungeon tomorrow since school's out. Will tells him he and Colette are going shopping instead to pick up some new gear. Colette shows up and Will greets her, throwing her a compliment on her outfit. Then Rosti walks in, introduces himself to Colette, and Will explains why Rosti's tagging tagging along. Rosti then pulls a goofy move, turning around and making a funny face at Colette while holding hands with Will. A montage plays out, showing Rosti continuously wrecking Colette's chances to get close to Will, always popping up at the worst times, acting like he's some kind of boss. Colette's had enough and calls Will out on his relationship with Rosti. Will, being his usual chill self, explains Rosti's random quirks and how the dude's always doing something weird. Then Rosti strolls in with drinks, getting way too cozy with Will, and Colette's blood starts boiling. Rosti and Colette start throwing verbal punches, each one trying to prove they're the one who deserves Will's attention. Rosti straight up admits he's in love with Will, making things even messier. The two of them go back and forth, throwing insults, trying to outdo each other in a battle of who's got the best claim on Will. Lehana then swoops in, cutting through the drama and pulling Will away to talk. They head to a tea house where Wignall, Julius, and Shaun are already waiting. Lehana doesn't waste time, laying out her plan and asking Will to join her squad for the all-student praxis event. She spills her reasons, with Wignall backing her up like a true bro. Even though the Lightning faction tried to snatch her up after the festival, Lehana feels like she's still in the shadows. She opens up about her family's tragic past and how she's gotta make a name for herself fast. She's all in on becoming a Magia Vander. Will, Wignall, Shaun, and Julius listen, and they all agree to join her party. Fast forward to Werkner, giving his usual "you better be ready" speech about the praxis event. It's 10 days away, and the dungeon's gonna open up the 7th to 10th floors for the students to grind monsters and rack up credits. Edward chimes in, dropping the harsh truth that some of them might not even make it out alive. The day of the event rolls around, and Will and his crew show up. Colette makes it crystal clear she's sticking by Will's side no matter what. Rosti runs into them and tells Will he's not allowed to participate, throwing a wrench in the plans. Will thanks him for the magic items and brushes it off. Edward gives one last rundown of the event as it kicks off. Logwell meets with Carriot, informing him that the all-student praxis event is going down this year. Carriot, clearly uninterested, tells Logwell he has no desire to represent the wands. Logwell, however, isn't having it and starts trashing the other wands, lightning, elves, and ice, throwing shade on all of them. He pushes Ink India, the Flame Emperor's wand, as the best option. Carriot doesn't argue, but his reluctance is obvious. Back at the praxis event, the proctor makes the announcement that it's time to start. Will, Lehana, and their crew arrive at a new area and are immediately hit with a swarm of crimson ants. Before Will can even think about making a move, Lehana charges in and takes out the ants in one swift attack. Will watches impressed. Then we flash back to Werkner, who once told Will that search magic was the key. Will, now in the middle of the praxis event, gets it. It's not just about brute force, it's about strategy and knowing when to strike. He sees Julius defeat an enemy with ease and starts to worry. Will wonders if the others will clear the monsters too fast, leaving him nothing to fight. Wignall isn't much help either, doubting Will's abilities alongside Lehana. That gets into Will's head, and soon enough he starts doubting himself too. They keep pushing forward, tackling new locations and taking down monsters. But when they hit a rocky terrain, things get tense. Lehana asks Will to hand out food, but Wignall shoots him down, refusing to let Will touch him. He doesn't think Will deserves it. Meanwhile, Lehana shifts gears and tells everyone they need to focus on taking down the luminous Nabris first, leaving the other monsters for later. We then see two men in a shady location. One remains nameless, but the other is possibly known as Headless. They've just killed someone and the tension is palpable. The two killers are laughing it up after murdering monsters and participants like it's nothing. They're having a blast chatting about Headless' savage moves like it's all a joke. But then we jump back to the main crew. They've made it to the 10th floor of the praxis event. Julius is confused as hell, seeing that another party beat them to the punch and somehow got here faster. They stumble upon the Nabris, but it's already dead. Lehana and the others start putting the pieces together, realizing someone else got to it first. Flashback time. Werkner's words echo in Will's head. Search magic isn't perfect. He talks about how monsters and even other mages can work around it and dodge its reach. Will's starting to get why it's not all that it's cracked up to be. Suddenly, a massive, unnamed monster shows up and slams into Wignall. The whole crew gets tossed around like ragdolls, crashing down onto the 11th floor, getting split into smaller groups. Julius and Shaun start griping about how only top-tier mages can survive in this crazy new zone. Colette's running full speed, worried sick after Lehana took a nasty hit during the fall. Lehana's not fazed though. She brushes it off, telling Colette she's fine but wants to regroup with the rest of the crew. Flashback again, and we're back to Wignall, younger and getting roasted by a bunch of elves, including the elven queen Eleanor. They're tearing him apart for his pathetic illusion magic skills. It's savage. Will's seeing the bigger picture, wanting to help Wignall out now, but Wignall's having none of it. He won't accept Will's help but asks for some medical supplies instead. Classic Wignall. Back to the present, Werkner's Claire's having a convo with Professor Eliza, who's spilling the tea on what's going down on the 8th floor. She's worried about what the hell's happening on the floors above. Meanwhile, Edward calls off the whole competition, asking Werkner to help figure out what the hell caused this mess. Will and Wignall are still navigating the 11th floor when Will tells Wignall to lay off the search magic. He goes into detail, explaining why it's not the move right now and what they're dealing with. He stays cool under pressure and gets to work on a plan to get them through it. Then, a bunch of pig-like monsters Jurjiza charge them. Wignall, struggling to keep up, gets stuck, and that's when Will steps in, smashing through one of the Jurjiza like it's nothing. Will breaks down why Wignall's illusions didn't cut it against them, but he throws Wignall a compliment, acknowledging that he's still got some growing to do, but not as much as people think. Wignall drops the truth. Out of all the elves at the academy, he's the only one still stuck here after 6 damn years. Every other elf has already ascended the tower, and before they bounced, they called him a disgrace. They hated his illusion magic. Normally, elven illusion magic creates illusions you can actually touch and interact with, but Wignall's illusions were just mind tricks, fake as shit, nothing real. Will can't wrap his head around how Wignall could be seen as a failure, especially when he's one of the top 3 students. But the reality is, Wignall's still here, and hasn't even come close to ascending the tower. Lehana gets it too. She thinks that if someone's really got talent, they'll rise to the top eventually. But over the past 6 years, she's watched tons of people leave her in the dust. It hit her like a brick that maybe she's not good enough to even get noticed by the damn tower. Even being number 1 at the academy doesn't mean shit when you realize the academy's just a tiny little pond in a massive ocean. Then, Wignall tells Will that he grew up with Eleanor, and he really gave a damn about her. But Eleanor was a beast of a mage, shot up to the top faster than Wignall ever expected. He busted his ass trying to catch up to her, but no matter how hard he tried, it didn't work. Will, trying to relate, says they're not so different and promises he'll protect Wignall until he's strong enough to handle things himself. They keep plowing through, slaying monsters like it's nothing, and Wignall starts wondering why the hell Will hasn't bailed on him like everyone else has. Will tells Wignall that he knows he's not a mean elf. Kiki senses a monster nearby, but Wignall can't find it with his search magic. Will explains that the dungeon is giving birth to monsters, specifically fire creatures called Balkars, which are resistant to magic. Will's pretty damn sure elven illusion magic could work on these monsters, and he's hoping Wignall can back him up. Wignall's not convinced, telling Will to forget about it, but Will pushes him to at least try. After a moment, Wignall really thinks it over. Even though they have similar goals, they're still different, and something about Will's word sticks with him. Wignall gives it a shot, trying to help Will out, but the Balkars bust through his illusions like it's nothing. Kiki jumps in to help Will, and Will, frustrated but determined, pushes Wignall harder. The guy finally starts reflecting on all the shit Will's done for him and uses his magic to wipe out the Balkars. He bows to Will, saying he's earned his respect. They shake hands like real mages and keep pushing forward. Will pulls out Rosty's Seeker map, explaining that with Kiki's sharp sense of smell and the map, they'll track down Colette and Lehana. Back at the other end, Julius and Shaun are arguing like idiots over resources. Then, Shaun suddenly picks up the scent of monsters nearby and drags Julius out of the way as a pack of evil sentinels roll up. Shaun's ready to fight, no hesitation. Meanwhile, Edward's on the move, protecting students from evil sentinels on his floor, telling them to evacuate to the 6th floor. Werkner rolls up in a sky racer to grab Edward, filling him in on Kiki's plan to find Lehana's group. Soon enough, Will and Wignall run into Shaun and Julius, who've wiped out the evil sentinels but still haven't found Colette or Lehana. On the other side of the dungeon, Lehana and Colette are face to face with Headless and his sidekick Mars. Headless starts talking shit about destroying the Great Barrier, and just as he's about to strike, Will and the gang roll in. Will explains how they track them down. Headless, not backing down, attacks Will, but Mars yanks him away, clearly having other priorities. Headless then summons a beast called Duke, using a transportation spell to bring it into the fray. The narrator explains the 1 out of 1,000 credit rule, which is some serious shit. In the tower system, 1 credit on a monster equals the strength of a mage with 1,000 credits. And right in front of Will, the evil Grand Duke, rocking 270 credits, which is the same as a mage with the power of 270,000 credits. Will's stunned as he stares at the monster, realizing how outmatched they are. The beast charges, and Will and his crew bail for a quick SEC to come up with a plan. We cut to Will and Shaun standing on a cliff, looking down at a shitload of monsters. Julius and Colette show up, and the 4 start talking strategy. Will says they need to take down Duke. He figures if Duke goes down, the rest of the monsters will fold, and Werkner, Edward, and the rest of the academy crew will be able to rescue them. Everyone's on board with Will's plan, except Julius, who's being a little bitch about it. Will steps up and promises Julius he'll teach him one of Elfaria's secret moves if he follows the damn plan. Time passes and the battle's on. Colette, Julius, and the others clash with Duke. Julius, using Elfaria's Ars Weiss spell that will taught him, starts going hard against Duke. The crew starts blasting their spells, all working together to chip away at Duke's strength. Lehana tries to get a shot in, but Duke just blocks her like it's nothing. That's when Will and Kiki step in. Kiki creates a barrier to protect Will, but Duke's new attack is so strong it shatters Kiki's shield and destroys Will's goggles in the process. Meanwhile, Edward and Werkner keep pushing through the damn dungeon, still searching for Will and his crew. Lahanna and the others are brainstorming a new strategy, but they're getting nowhere fast. Lahanna and Wignall decide to go all out against Duke, even though Colette and the others are seriously freaking out. Wignall and Lahanna try to go hard, but they're getting their asses handed to them. On top of that, Will's feeling down in the dumps after losing Elfaria's goggles, and Shaun catches on to his sudden shift in attitude. Shaun calls him out, and it's just what Will needed. Will finally thanks Shaun for punching some sense into him. Will snaps out of his funk, walks over to his sword, and jumps back into the fight. With his confidence back, he goes at Duke with all he's got. Colette, fired up by Will's determination, jumps in too. Then Shaun follows, adding his firepower to the mix. But even with all of them ganging up on Duke, the bastard still won't go down. Just when things look like shit, a crystal drops right in front of Will, and everything goes blurry. A flashback hits him hard. A woman, a baby, and some mysterious cloaked figure. The woman says some cryptic shit. One day wand and sword will meet. Back in the present, Will snaps out of it, suddenly understanding everything. He locks eyes with his sword and bolts for it, shouting at Shaun for some help with his magic. At the same time, Will drops the bomb on Shaun. It's a wand and sword, that's the answer. Shaun doesn't question it and uses his fire magic on Will's sword. The sword bursts into flames and Colette's mind is blown. She thinks it's just some enchantment, but soon realizes it's something way bigger. Will grabs the fiery sword and takes Duke down with one final hellish strike. Standing over Duke's lifeless body, Will glares down with eyes full of pure menace. Will steps up like a total badass and takes the Grand Duke head on. He swings his sword and the beast goes down, leaving everyone completely stunned. Just as they're about to breathe a sigh of relief, shit hits the fan. A whole damn horde of monsters, sentinels, and guards charge in, drawn by the death of the Grand Duke. Will, Shaun, and the crew are in deep shit now, too exhausted to keep going. That's when Aaron Mysterious, the old king, and the sovereign king of the Magia Vander, the most powerful wand in the land, shows up out of nowhere. Will's surprised as hell, wondering why Aaron's here. With one hell of a high-level spell, Aaron turns the tide of the battle, blasting the enemies with the Lord of Light and blessing all the magical warriors with some insane power. Aaron's entrance fills everyone with awe, but Will's got his eyes locked on him, sensing there's more to this than meets the eye. Then, out of nowhere, some dude jumps down and strolls over to Will. He's shocked the sword's still alive, then asks Will his name before introducing himself as Finn. Meanwhile, Mars is chilling in another spot, relieved he didn't have to deal with Will and the others. Their job's done, but there's still a bitter aftertaste. 11 professors from the academy are dead, and the weight of that loss hangs heavy. The rest of the faculty worked their asses off to make sure the students got out, but it doesn't change the fact that the school's been hit hard. They're still hunting for whoever's behind it all, but no solid leads yet. Shaun's curious as hell about the two creepy figures from earlier. Wignall admits he has no clue who they are, but they were strong enough to wipe out the professors. Meanwhile, Colette's still struggling to deal with Professor Bruno's death, and Will tries his best to comfort her. Julius, deep in thought, knows they're damn lucky to have been saved by the mysterious Noah. That's probably why they're even alive. Lahanna, still catching her breath after everything, admits she formed the team for the wrong reasons, mainly to get recognition from the tower. But now, seeing the strength of her team, she's proud as hell to be part of it. The mood lightens when Colette, laughing, starts feeding Lahanna, who's scarfing down food like a damn vacuum cleaner. Colette teases her about being a glutton, and the rest of the team joins in on the fun. The light-hearted vibe doesn't last long. Lahanna's all serious, saying if it weren't for Will's badass bravery, they'd all be dead by now. Will, being modest as hell, insists it was all about their teamwork. But Julius, never short of a smartass comment, jokes that they almost bought it because of Will's shitty plan. In the middle of the laughs, Shaun speaks up, asking about some power that ate his magic during the battle. Colette, still pretty damn impressed, mentions how that power was so goddamn bright and intense that it nearly took her breath away. Wignall starts spitting theories, saying it looked like it absorbed the spell, but Lahanna shuts him down, saying it wasn't a regular enchantment, not even magic. Will's just as confused. He admits his mind went blank during the fight and has no clue what the hell happened. The conversation shifts when Colette suggests Professor Werkner might have some answers to the freaky shit they saw. Meanwhile, Will remembers that boy who helped them out and wonders if anyone else noticed. Just another mystery to throw on the pile. Lahanna spills the beans about the Finn tribe, tiny people with a shit ton of knowledge about the dungeon. They can't use magic, but their partnership with the tower since the Magic Queen's days has been crucial for surviving the deep floors. Thanks to them, people keep exploring this hellhole of a world. Will's thinking about what he learned after taking down the Grand Duke, but he's also stuck on Finn, this weird kid who says he's eternally 7. The little bastard's a monster in the dungeon, hitting floor 49, and part of the People of Light. He's been on a long-ass expedition, and now he's talking to Cauldron, the Rigarden Magic Academy director. He hands over a mage-killing weapon found deep in the dungeon and says he's pretty sure it wasn't some natural thing, it was made by someone with some seriously dark shit in mind. Aaron told Finn to dig deeper into this, but Finn's not gonna sit back and watch. Finn asks why Will's even in their group, since he doesn't belong here. Cauldron's like, it's not her call, it's Will's decision. Meanwhile, shit's getting tense between Will and Shaun. Shaun's pissed about some promise he made and challenges Will to a duel, even though Colette warns them both that they're still fucked up from the last fight. But Shaun doesn't give a damn. He wants to prove himself, and so does Will. They're both itching to see who's got the bigger balls, especially with their eyes on the top of the magic tower. Days later, the academy's got a thick, nervous energy. Final exams are coming up, and Werkner, one of the professors, tells the students to push through the shit they've been through. For Will, these exams mean more than just schoolwork, they're the last damn thing standing between him and Elfaria.